All right, now stop what you're doing. Stop scrolling through that timeline. Put that remote down and come on in. Come sit with your auntie for a minute because the tea I am about to pour is so piping hot. It's going to fog up your screen. You're going to need to wipe the condensation off your glasses just to see straight. I'm telling you, this ain't your everyday gossip. This is a cautionary tale, a horror story, and a glorious sermon on revenge all rolled into one. I want you to listen to this, and I mean, really listen with your whole spirit, because some stories are just stories and some are lessons wrapped in heartbreak. This one, honey, this is the final exam. I paid $100,000 for the surrogate to carry my child. I paid for her luxury apartment, her organic food from Erewhon, her designer maternity clothes from Hatch. I thought she was giving me a miracle, the one thing my Platinum American Express couldn't buy. But in the delivery room, while I was waiting to hold my son for the very first time, my husband wasn't holding my hand. He was holding hers. And when my beautiful boy took his first breath, my husband looked at me with eyes as cold and empty as a foreclosed mansion and said, "Thanks for the baby, Monica, but we don't need you anymore." He thought he was walking away with my child, my life, and half of my empire. He forgot one thing, honey. He forgot who he was dealing with. He forgot that I didn't just sign a check for a baby. I signed a contract. And that baby? Oh, that baby is mine. You think you've heard stories about trifling, audacious, low down, dirty, no good men? Child, you have not heard a single thing yet. This story right here, this is the masterclass in how to get your heart broken and build a throne from the pieces. So let's go back. Let's set the scene proper so you can feel this in your bones. Picture Monica, 40 years old and sculpted from pure uncut ambition and a grace that was hard-won. This was not some trust fund baby, no ma'am. Monica was the architect of her own destiny, the god of her own universe. She built her tech empire, a titan in the industry called Nexus Innovations, from a dusty laptop in a cramped studio apartment that smelled like burnt coffee, instant noodles, and the metallic tang of desperation. I'm talking about the days when she used to sleep on a yoga mat next to her server racks just to make sure they didn't overheat, using her last $20 to pay for more data instead of dinner. She was fueled by a fear of failure so profound it tasted like pennies in the back of her throat. She worked while others slept. She schemed while others partied. She missed weddings, birthdays, and funerals, sacrificing pieces of her life at the altar of her ambition. Now she lived in a glass palace that pierced the skyline of the city, a 3-story penthouse that was a testament to her victory over gravity and doubt. Her garage housed a pearl-white Mercedes G-Wagon for city driving and a midnight black Porsche 911 for when she wanted to fly. Her closet wasn't a closet. It was a hallowed hall, a temperature-controlled sanctuary of Birkins and red bottoms, a museum of her own success where every Chanel jacket was a battle won. She didn't just smell rich. She smelled like Tom Ford's Black Orchid and the undeniable, intoxicating scent of power. Monica was, and always had been, that woman. And then there was David. Honey, when Monica met David, he was a beautiful, beautiful man with a pocket full of lint and a heart full of dreams he couldn't afford. He had a smile that could disarm nations and a body sculpted by the gods. But his bank account was on life support. He was a personal trainer at the bougie, exclusive gym Monica belonged to, smelling of cheap body spray and unrealized potential. He'd walk around with that 1,000-watt smile saying, "You got this," to middle-aged bankers struggling to lift weights. But his eyes held a deep, yearning hunger. He didn't want to be the help. He wanted to be the one being helped. He watched Monica stride in every morning at 5 a.m., all focus and quiet power, and he saw a lottery ticket, and Monica, bless her brilliant, lonely heart, fell head over heels for the potential. Her life was a series of acquisitions and mergers. She looked at this man, and she saw her next project. She saw a dusty canvas, and with the quiet arrogance of a creator, she decided she was going to paint her own masterpiece of a man. The loneliness at the top is a cold, sharp thing, child. It makes you see warmth where there is only ambition. And paint, she did. Child, she didn't just give him a credit card, she gave him a whole new identity. The student loan debt that was choking him like a vine, wiped clean with a single wire transfer before he'd even finished his morning coffee. His dream of an MBA from a top-tier school. She paid the tuition in full and hired private tutors to make sure he passed. Because let's be honest, his brain wasn't the muscle she fell in love with. She swapped his beat-up Honda Civic with its mismatched hubcaps and perpetually on check engine light for a menacing black Range Rover with seats the color of peanut butter. She didn't just buy him clothes, she flew him to Milan, first class, to be fitted for bespoke Brioni suits. She taught him the difference between a stock and a bond, which fork to use for the fish course, how to hold a glass of 30-year-old scotch like he belonged in the room where it happens. The first time she took him to a charity gala, he stood by the shrimp tower like a lost child, and she'd had to gently steer him away, whispering the names of the board members he needed to impress. She curated his entire existence. She took him from a boy who smiled for tips to a man who sat on charity boards, his name printed on glossy invitations. She chiseled away his insecurities with compliments, polished his rough charm with exposure, and presented him to her world as her equal. And in return, he worshipped her, or at least he played the part of a worshiper to perfection. At galas, he'd kiss her temple for the cameras, his hand a permanent, possessive fixture on the small of her back. He'd tell her friends and colleagues, "I'd be nothing without this woman. She's my everything." And Monica, who could dissect a hostile takeover in her sleep and spot a lie in a balance sheet from a mile away, bought every last word box. Because for all her boardroom genius, her heart had a blind spot the size of the Grand Canyon. She wanted to believe she had built a partner, not just a dependent. They were the ultimate power couple. Her, the quiet storm of intellect and capital. Him, the handsome, charming frontman who had learned his lines and wore the costumes she provided. But there was a gaping, aching void in their glass palace, an echo in the sprawling, marble-floored hallways that no amount of success could fill. A baby. For all her power to bend the world to her will, Monica's own body staged a quiet, brutal rebellion. Years of 100-hour work week, skipping meals for meetings, and prioritizing her career meant she'd waited. And when she was finally, desperately ready, her body simply said no. Doctor after doctor, their faces a mask of clinical pity, delivered the same verdict. Your eggs are viable, Monica. They're excellent, but your womb, it's what we call inhospitable. A 5-star suite with a do not disturb sign hung on the door. Her body, the one thing she couldn't command, had betrayed her. Each failed IVF cycle was a fresh new death. The sharp, antiseptic smell of the clinic, the cold press of the ultrasound wand against her skin, the fragile, budding hope that would be brutally extinguished by a nurse's sympathetic, "I'm so sorry," over the phone a few weeks later. She remembered the third time sitting in the car afterwards, rain streaking down the windows, the world outside a blurry watercolor of grief. The silence in the G-Wagon was a living entity, a third passenger, a crushing weight that settled on Monica's chest and made it hard to breathe. David squeezed her hand, his handsome face a perfect mask of concern. "We'll get through this, baby," he'd murmur, his voice smooth as silk. "It's you and me. We're a team." But behind the perfectly rehearsed words, Monica saw a flicker of something else, a deep, primal disappointment that mirrored the barren, aching emptiness inside of her. He wasn't disappointed for them. He was disappointed in her. Upstairs, the nursery sat in pristine, heartbreaking silence, a monument to a dream she couldn't buy. The artisan crib, carved from sustainable oak, the tiny cashmere sweaters in shades of cream and gray, the rocking chair poised by the floor-to-ceiling window, waiting for a weight it would never hold. Sometimes late at night, Monica would slip into that room and sit in the dark, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and fading hope, and the silence would be so loud it felt like it was shattering her ribs. She was the woman who had everything, and yet she had nothing. After the fifth and final failed embryo transfer, her doctor, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense voice, sat her down. "Monica," she said gently, pushing a box of tissues across the mahogany desk, It's time. It's time to talk about a gestational carrier." A surrogate. The word felt cold, clinical, transactional, outsourcing the most intimate act of creation. It felt like a failure. Another thing her body couldn't do. But then she thought of the silent nursery, of the flash of disappointment in David's eyes, of the gaping hole in her otherwise perfect life. This was the last play, the final desperate move on the board. And that's how the devil walked into their lives, dressed as an angel named Vanessa. Child, if you looked up deceptive innocence in the dictionary, you'd find this girl's picture. Vanessa was 26, with skin like warm honey and big, soulful brown eyes that seemed to hold all the sorrows of the world while radiating a saintly glow. She presented herself as a humble nursing student, her voice a soft, melodic whisper. At their first meeting in a sterile agency office, she told them a sob story about wanting to pay for her mother's medical treatments, her hands clasped demurely in her lap. She said she just wanted to give the gift of life, her hands clasped demurely in her lap. She wanted to help a deserving family like them experience the miracle she took for granted. She even teared up a little, talking about how blessed she felt to be able to do this. She was perfect. It's so perfect it should have been a red flag the size of a billboard on the side of the highway. But Monica and David, starved for hope, saw only their savior. They saw the answer to their prayers wrapped in a simple floral dress and an aura of sincerity. Monica, being Monica, orchestrated the entire process like a corporate merger. She moved Vanessa from a cramped third-floor walk-up in a questionable neighborhood into a gleaming, furnished two-bedroom condo in a luxury high-rise with a doorman and a pool. Rent, utilities, parking, all taken care of. She gave Vanessa a dedicated black card for organic groceries from Whole Foods, prenatal yoga classes, and maternity clothes from designer boutiques like A Pea in the Pod and Hatch. "My son will be surrounded by the best from the very beginning," Monica declared, more to herself than to David. Her top-tier family law attorney, a shark named Robert Sterling, drafted a contract that was less of a document and more of a fortress. 50 pages of ironclad, airtight clauses, cross-referenced and bulletproof. It was explicit. Monica's egg, David's sperm, Vanessa's womb. The resulting child was biologically, legally, spiritually, and unequivocally the sole property of Monica Hale. There were no loopholes, no gray areas, no wiggle room. Monica signed, David signed, Vanessa signed, barely glancing at the pages, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Oh, this is all so official. I trust you guys completely," she chirped. The first installment of the $100,000 fee hit Vanessa's account. And for the first time in a decade, Monica felt a pure, unadulterated wave of joy. The embryo transfer was a success. The phone call came, and the words were the sweetest music she had ever heard. "Congratulations, Monica. You're pregnant." Technically, Vanessa was the one with the hormones and the morning sickness, but in Monica's heart and soul, she was the one who was pregnant. She was finally going to be a mother. The first trimester was a dream, a fragile, beautiful bubble of shared hope. Monica was a doting mother-to-be, sending organic meal kits to Vanessa's condo, checking in 3 times a day, attending every single doctor's appointment. She'd sit in the darkened room holding Vanessa's hand on one side and David's on the other, her eyes locked on the ultrasound screen, watching the pulsating flicker that was her son. Her son. But then the bubble began to thin. The shift was subtle at first, a change in barometric pressure that only Monica seemed to feel. David started spending more and more time checking on Vanessa. It started with a quick popover, just making sure she took her prenatal vitamins, he'd say with a virtuous smile. Then it became entire afternoons. He started going to appointments alone. "Babe, you were slammed with that Tokyo merger. I didn't want to bother you," he'd explain, his charm a smokescreen. "I got a video of the heartbeat for you." One evening, Monica planned a special dinner, just the two of them. She had their private chef make his favorite ossobuco. She put on a silk dress. At 7 o'clock, he called. "Babe, I'm so sorry. I can't make it. Vanessa's having a rough night, really bad morning sickness. I'm going to grab her some ginger ale and crackers and just make sure she's okay." Monica ate alone at their 12-foot dining table, surrounded by silence. A cold, slithering dread began to coil in Monica's stomach. She started to feel like an outsider looking in on her own life. She was the executive producer, the one funding the entire project, but she wasn't allowed on set. One afternoon, she came home early wanting to surprise David, only to find the house empty. A quick check of the security cameras showed him leaving hours earlier. On a whim, she drove to Vanessa's condo building, and there was the Range Rover parked in a visitor spot. She sat in her G-Wagon for an hour, heart pounding, before she saw them emerge. They weren't just talking, they were laughing, his arm slung casually over Vanessa's shoulder. It was an intimacy that felt like a betrayal. She'd call Vanessa to see how she was feeling, only to be met with a breezy, "Oh, I'm great. David just brought me that vegan ramen I was craving from that place in the village. He's just so thoughtful, isn't he?" The word "we" started to infect their conversations, a virus spreading through her life. David would come home and report, "We're feeling a little tired today," or "We think he's going to be a soccer player. He's kicking so much." We. A two-letter word that felt like a slap in the face. One night in their cavernous living room with the city lights twinkling below like a blanket of diamonds, she tried to voice her fear. "David," she began, her voice small, "I feel a little disconnected. It feels like you and Vanessa are having this baby together and I'm just the sponsor." David put down his iPad, his face a perfect mask of loving condescension. "Honey, don't be ridiculous. You're the mother. Vanessa is just the oven. I'm just managing the situation, protecting our investment. You're busy running a global empire." "Let me handle this." He kissed her forehead, a gesture that was meant to be reassuring but felt dismissive, like patting a hysterical child on the head. He called her paranoid in the kindest way possible and told her she was just anxious because the pregnancy wasn't real for her yet. And because the alternative was a horror she couldn't bear to face, she let it go. She convinced herself she was being irrational. The baby shower was the moment the veil didn't just tear, it was shredded in front of God and everyone. Monica had, of course, thrown a lavish, spectacular affair. A string quartet played softly in the garden of their penthouse. Caterers served champagne and miniature works of art on silver platters. The mountain of gifts wrapped in shades of robin's egg blue was obscene. Vanessa was the guest of honor, glowing in a white silk maternity dress Monica had personally selected from Chanel. But David clung to her side like a shadow. He stood behind her chair as she opened gifts, his hands resting on her swollen belly, with a casual possessiveness that made Monica's blood run cold. He'd lean in, whisper something in her ear, and they would share a secret, intimate smile. They looked like the happy couple. They looked like the parents-to-be. As Vanessa opened a gift for Monica, a tiny pair of Gucci loafers, David laughed and said, "Look at that. Our son's already got better shoes than I used to." our son. When Vanessa opened another gift, a delicate gold locket, she looked up at David, her eyes shining. Oh, David, it's beautiful. You shouldn't have. It wasn't from the registry. It was from him, a secret between them. Then came the toasts. David stood, tapped his glass, and began a speech. To Monica, he started, a brief nod in her direction, for making this all possible. Then he turned his entire body to Vanessa. His voice softened, deepened, but mostly to Vanessa, for your sacrifice, for your strength, for carrying our son with such grace. You are a true angel. You are giving me the family I've always dreamed of. He looked at her not like she was the oven, but like she was the whole damn meal. Monica stood by the French doors, clutching a glass of sparkling water, feeling like a ghost at her own son's party. Her best friend, Chloe, a firecracker of a woman who took no prisoners, came over, her eyes narrowed with concern. Mon, what the hell is going on? He hasn't left her side. He's touching her like he owns her. Open your damn eyes. This isn't protection, this is possession. And the worst part, Monica defended him. Chloe, stop. He's just excited. He's being protective of the baby. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. That night, after the guests left and the caterers had cleared away the debris of her humiliation, sleep was a distant country she couldn't reach. The dread was no longer a coil. It was a living, breathing monster in her gut. She confronted him. David, your toast was humiliating. You barely acknowledged me. And the locket? He sighed, running a hand through his perfect hair. Monica, you're being so sensitive. I thanked you. What more do you want? Vanessa is the one going through the physical part. I was just trying to make her feel appreciated. God, you make everything a business transaction. It was gaslighting 101, and he was the professor. He twisted her valid feelings into an accusation of jealousy and insecurity. She ended up apologizing to... She retreated to her sprawling bathroom, sank to the cold marble floor, and finally let the tears come. A silent, soul-shattering cry for the woman she used to be, the one who would have seen this coming, the one who would have cut her losses at the first sign of a bad investment. She had built this man. She had built this life. And she had the sickening, bone-deep certainty that she had also bankrolled her own destruction. She lay there for an hour, drowning in the grief. Then she wandered into the silent nursery. She ran her hand over the cold, smooth wood of the crib. She picked up a tiny cashmere booty and held it in her palm. She thought of the life she had imagined in this room, and a new feeling began to emerge from the wreckage of her heart. Not hope, not yet, but a cold, hard pragmatism. She was a CEO. She didn't operate on feelings. She operated on data and risk mitigation. She walked to the safe in her office, her steps now firm, her fingers no longer trembling, spun the combination. She pulled out the thick leather-bound folder containing the prenup and the surrogacy contract. She didn't just hold them. She read every single word. She highlighted clauses. She made notes. Then at 2 a.m., she sent a text to her lawyer. Robert, I suspect a hostile takeover of my personal life. I need you to prepare a full-spectrum defensive maneuver. Assume the worst-case scenario. Assume adultery. Assume conspiracy. I want every asset shielded, every contingency covered. I want scorched earth ready to go on my command. The call came at 3:17 a.m. It was David, his voice tight with an excitement that felt obscene. Her water broke. We're on our way to the hospital. Where? There it was again. Monica's heart slammed against her ribs like a trapped bird, but this time something else was there too. Ice. She threw on the first clothes she could find, black leggings, a cashmere sweater, grabbed the designer diaper bag she had packed for herself months ago, and sped through the sleeping city, a silent scream trapped in her throat. But her mind was a steel trap. When she burst into the delivery suite, the scene that greeted her stole the air from her lungs. It was a tableau from her worst nightmares. Vanessa, pale and sweating in the hospital bed, and David, right there beside her, holding her hand, stroking her hair, whispering in her ear, "You're doing amazing, baby. Just breathe for me. We're almost there." He wasn't her coach. He was her partner. Monica stood frozen in the doorway, a piece of driftwood in the current of their intimacy. A nurse bustled past. "Oh, you must be Monica, the mother. Come on in, dear." The title felt like a mockery. David glanced over his shoulder, and his expression wasn't relief or welcome. It was annoyance. Pure, unadulterated annoyance, as if she'd walked in on a sacred moment. "Hey," he said, his voice flat, "you made it." The hours that followed were a unique and exquisite form of torture. The relentless beeping of the machines, the sharp clinical smell of disinfectant, Vanessa's guttural cries, but the real pain was the invisible cord that bound David and Vanessa together. They were a unit, a team. When the doctor announced it was time to push, David was there, holding Vanessa's leg, his face inches from hers. "Push, my love, push. Our son is almost here. Our son." The words hit Monica with the force of a physical blow. And then, with one final primal scream, he was here, a perfect, healthy baby boy, filling the sterile room with his furious, beautiful cries. For one single incandescent moment, pure joy obliterated everything else. My son is here." Tears of relief and love streamed down Monica's face. She held out her arms, her entire being yearning to hold him. "My baby," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Please let me hold my baby." The nurse cleaned him, wrapped him in a striped blanket, and looked to David. And David, without a moment's hesitation, took the baby. He didn't walk towards Monica. He walked to the bed. He looked down at Vanessa with an expression of such profound love that it cracked Monica's heart clean in two, and he placed their son in Vanessa's arms. He leaned down and kissed Vanessa, a long, lingering, passionate kiss on the lips. Then he kissed the baby's forehead. The world stopped, the beeping, the nurses, the very air in the room seemed to freeze. Monica stood there, her arms still outstretched, aching and empty. Finally, David turned to her. The look on his face was not one of apology or confusion. It was cold, hard triumph. It was the look of a predator who had finally cornered his prey. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick, legal-sized envelope. "Thanks for the baby, Monica," he said, his voice casual, almost bored. The casualness was the cruelest part. "And for, all the rest, but we don't need you anymore." He gestured back at Vanessa, who was gazing down at the baby with a smug, victorious smirk. "We're a real family now," David said, his eyes glittering. "Something you, with your barren womb and your broken parts, could never give me. You were just the bank account, Monica, a necessary but unpleasant means to an end. A walking, talking ATM with a broken uterus." The floor dropped away. The room tilted, the sounds blurring into a dull, painful roar. This couldn't be happening. It was a fever dream. "David, what are you saying?" She stammered, the words tearing at her throat. "That's my son. Give me my son." He let out a short, ugly laugh. "Your son? An egg isn't a mother, Monica." "She is," he said, pointing at Vanessa. "She did the work. She's the real mother." He shoved the envelope against her chest. "These are divorce papers. I'll be taking half of everything naturally. For my new family, it's the least you can do." He thought he'd won. The broke trainer and the fake angel. They thought they had played the queen and taken the whole kingdom. They saw her standing there, broken, tears streaming down her face, her body trembling with shock. They saw a victim, but child, they weren't looking close enough, because beneath the agony, beneath the heartbreak so absolute, it felt like her soul was being ripped from her body. The tiny cold ember she had nurtured the night before roared into a bonfire. The tears were real. The pain was a physical thing. But his words, You were just the bank account and didn't just break her heart that they woke the dragon, the CEO, the builder, the woman who ate hostile takeovers for breakfast. She took one deep, shuddering breath and another. She wiped her tears away, not with a delicate dab, but with a furious, angry swipe of her hand. Her spine, which had been slumped in grief, straightened into a column of steel. Her chin lifted, the heartbroken woman vanished, and the titan of industry took her place. Her eyes, red-rimmed but blazing with cold fire, fixed on them. And she smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile that came right before she liquidated a failed asset. You're right, David, she said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. I was the bank account, and the first rule of high finance, the house always wins. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were still shaking slightly, but her thumb was steady as it found the contact she needed. David and Vanessa exchanged a confused, nervous glance. What are you doing? David sneered. Calling your mommy? My lawyer, Monica said, her eyes never leaving his. The call connected. Robert, she said, her voice pure ice. It's Monica. We are code red. Execute the protocol. Yes, the hospital. Delivery suite 3. Bring the packets and bring security. The big ones. She hung up. The color drained from David's handsome, treacherous face. Protocol? What the hell are you talking about? You see, Monica said, taking a deliberate step forward, her presence suddenly sucking all the air out of the room. I have a big heart, David. It's my biggest weakness, but I do not have a soft head. I didn't build $1 billion company by being stupid. She turned her arctic gaze to Vanessa, who was now clutching the baby like a shield. Let's start with you, sweetheart. You signed a 50-page ironclad gestational carrier agreement. I'm sure you found the font size a little small, but if you had bothered to read Article 7, Section B, you would know that you have no genetic link to this child, my egg, my husband's sperm. You are, in the cold, hard language of the law, a vessel. Your legal role in this child's life concluded the exact second he left your body. By continuing to hold him after I've asked for him, you are committing custodial interference. It's a felony. Vanessa's doe eyes widened with pure panic. She looked at David, her angel face crumbling. Monica didn't give him a chance to answer. Her gaze snapped to her husband. And you, my darling, ambitious boy. You handed me divorce papers. Very bold. But you seem to have forgotten our prenuptial agreement, the one my legal team at Sullivan and Cromwell drafted, and the ambulance chaser you hired barely glanced at. Let me draw your attention to paragraph 12, the infidelity clause. It states that in the event of proven adultery, and I have months of text messages, GPS data from the Range Rover you're driving, and receipts from the Love Nest condo I've been paying for, you forfeit any and all claim to my assets. Not half. Not a penny. You walk away with what you brought into this marriage, which was, if memory serves, a gym bag and $76,000 in student loan debt, which I paid off. As if on cue, the door swung open. In walked 2 security guards who looked like they were carved from mountains, followed by a man in a ruthlessly sharp Brioni suit, holding a sleek leather briefcase. Robert, her lawyer, his face a mask of calm, lethal competence. Monica, Robert said, his voice the calm center of the storm. Everything is in motion. He opened the briefcase, removed a thick, court-stamped document, and handed it to the lead guard. This is the surrogacy contract and Ms. Hale's notarized order of sole immediate custody. The guard approached the bed. Ma'am, he said to Vanessa, his voice polite but unyielding, I need you to give the child to his mother. Vanessa erupted into hysterical sobs. No, he's my baby. I gave birth to him. You gave birth to my son, Monica corrected, her voice dangerously low. And your contract is fulfilled. Give him to me now, or the next people you speak to will be the NYPD. Tears of rage and terror streamed down Vanessa's face as the guard gently but inexorably pried her arms away and lifted the baby. He turned and walked the few steps to Monica, placing her son into her waiting, aching arms. and the world clicked back into place. The weight of him, the scent of him, the tiny perfect fingers that immediately curled around hers. The gaping hole in her soul was instantly filled. Her son, safe. David was sputtering, his face a mottled canvas of fury and disbelief. "You can't do this. I'm his father." "Are you?" Monica asked, raising a perfect eyebrow as she rocked her baby. "That's the final piece of the puzzle, isn't it? Robert, the final packet, please." Robert handed another document to David. "That's a DNA report, Mr. Sanchez." After the baby shower, Ms. Hale had some concerns. As part of our risk mitigation strategy, we had the clinic use a pre-screened anonymous donor for the fertilization. Your sample was discarded. You have no biological or legal claim to this child. None. The final blow landed. David staggered back as if she had physically struck him, his face slack with utter ruin. Robert then turned to a crying Vanessa and placed another folder on her bedside table. "And this, Ms. Miller, is the estimated bill for your delivery and hospital stay. As your contract with Ms. Hale is now fulfilled, all future expenses are your own. The hospital's financial aid office is on the second floor. I wish you the best of luck." Monica nodded to the security guards. "Please escort Mr. Sanchez and Ms. Miller off the premises." As the guards took their arms, David made one last pathetic grasp. "Monica, baby, please don't do this. I love you. We can work this out." Monica looked at him, at the man she had created and who had tried to destroy her, and she laughed. A real deep, cleansing laugh. "No, David, you love the lifestyle. You love the money. And as of this morning, it's all gone." She looked him dead in the eyes, her voice a refined, dismissive whisper. "Oh, and one more thing. I called American Express on the way to the hospital. All your supplementary cards have been deactivated. The locks on the house are being changed as we speak, and that Range Rover, it's being towed from the hospital parking garage right now. Good luck paying for that motel." The look of pure, unadulterated devastation on his face was the most satisfying bonus of her life. They were dragged from the room, Vanessa wailing, David screaming a pathetic mix of threats and apologies, the sounds fading down the hallway until they were nothing. The door clicked shut, and the room was filled with a beautiful, blessed silence. It was just Monica and her son. She sank into the visitor's chair, her eyes never leaving the perfect, sleeping face in her arms. She brought him to her nose and breathed him in. He smelled like milk and heaven. He smelled like victory. He smelled like home. She decided to name him Caleb. It meant wholehearted because he had taken her shattered heart and made it whole again. And in the end, honey, Karma didn't just write them a ticket. She totaled their car, set it on fire, and sold the scrap for parts. David and Vanessa, without Monica's money to lubricate their lies, imploded. Their shared dream curdled into a nightmare of blame and resentment in a roach-infested motel on the edge of Queens. He saw the broke waitress she was, and she saw the pathetic, charming loser he'd always been. Last I heard, he's back at a low-end gym, his $1,000,000 smile looking cheap under the fluorescent lights, trying to charm another woman with a nice car. But the story got out, honey. The internet has receipts, and Vanessa, she's waiting tables, her angel wings long since clipped, telling anyone who will listen about the baby that was stolen from her. And Monica's glorious. Her glass palace is no longer silent. It's filled with the music of nursery rhymes and a baby's laughter. Her heart is no longer a barren wasteland. It's a lush garden. She is a mother, a CEO, a warrior, a queen on her throne with her precious heir Caleb in her arms. So let me tell you something, and I want you to remember this. It is a beautiful and noble thing to build a life with a partner. But you never, ever build a partner from the ground up. You pour your magic into a man who is already a king, not into a boy you have to teach how to wear a crown. A project belongs in a portfolio, not in your heart. Protect your heart, always. But you better protect your peace, your power, and your paperwork even harder. Because when they show you that they see you not as a partner, but as a stepping stone, believe them. And then you do what Monica did. You pull out the receipts, you call in the cavalry, and you burn their world to the ground with a smile on your face, and you never, ever look back.